yeah, the link should work again. They're not banned or anything like that. Okay, so we are officially recording. Wonderful news. 150 of you now. This is absolute insanity. I feel like a really low budget YouTuber. I'm going to start reviewing my favorite beers in a minute. Right, so, okay. I'm just going to ping up a couple of slides first and we'll jump into it. So, okay, cool. So you guys should be able to see my screen now. Yeah, so this session today, documentation and sketchbook Q&A. It's going to be run by Tim Gundry, and it was Sarah King. She's not able to make it, so we've got Lucy Leake instead. Awesome news, and we'll introduce those guys in a minute, and they can do a little bit of a wave. They're probably already waving, maybe. So this session, yeah, will be recorded, and it can be available at a later date for any of you who have missed it, or any of your friends who have asked. Okay, so just some quick stuff. Google Meet, it's just our proprietary software that we have at PCA. We've had it for a while. We just use it to speak to one another, have group meetings. We use it quite a lot in PCA usually to kind of quickly chat with people and drop in and have meetings. And now we're using it more so than ever. We're using Meet for this. Yeah, you can get Meet via, you guys would have had this through a link in your schedule, but you can have it in Google Calendar, Google Classroom, basically anywhere a link can be accessed, you can have it that way too. Yeah, just some basic house rules for Google Meets. So this is what it will look like. I mean, you've already done it, you're in, but there's kind of a pre-loading window when you go into Google Meet, and this kind of allows you to see what you're going to look like just before you go live. So, see what your backdrop's like and see, yeah, how you look and stuff, if that bothers you. That's good. I've been moving all over the front room. This is apparently the lightest place I can sit. So this is my seat for the next week or so. Now, you will also get some little notifications down here. There's a microphone and a camera option. You can preemptively turn that off before you come in, and I would recommend doing that, just because if you all come in with the microphone on, you kind of get this mass whale noise, and it will go all through the internet. So yeah, maybe just try and mute that out of courtesy. And then, yeah, your camera is just preference, really. So some things here, this is the kind of window that you'll see. If the person speaking doesn't have their camera on, then their little profile picture will just flick up, which is fine. You can also mess around with your settings. So if you guys go over to the little three dots on the right-hand side, you can actually change the layout. So spotlight mode, for example, will highlight whoever's speaking, which is why some of you guys, if someone makes a rustle on their microphone, that's why their face will pop up. You can change it to tiled, so you see more people at once. Yeah, whatever's good for you. I have it on just, I think it's on tiled, so we're here and you guys are there. Meeting details over on the left there, that's just where any links would be, document attachments, things like that. There probably isn't anything in there other than a description of this session, but there's a potential for there to be more things in there. Down the bottom here, you've got the red phone, that will hang up, that will drop you out of the call, and you can come back in as well. There's no consequence to that. And yeah, the microphone and the camera here. This box up here, that's where the chat bot is. That's where I want you guys to be putting your comments. If you have any of them, comments and questions are both welcome. Yeah, you can also turn on captions if you like as well. So if you don't have that good speakers on your computer, you can just flick that on, and Google will try its best to translate what we are saying. It's very good. It also completely filters out swear words. We tried that this morning, so that's really good. Makes conversations look really, really different, and don't try that. But yeah, it definitely works, and that's something cool to flick on. You can also present your screen, which is just this one next door to it. That allows you to do what I'm doing now, showing my screen. I would say don't do that right now, because it's only one at a time. So as you were doing it, it would boot me off and we'd see your screen. So yeah, maybe don't do that right now. You don't need to know any of these things. I've already said that. And yeah, just be aware that the text chat is live. So what you pop in, everyone can see. Cool. I'm just going to leave this slide here just for a brief moment, just to give you guys some of the aims of the session, some things that we might cover, and then we'll just jump straight into it. Yes, that's there. I also fill every gap with an which is wonderful. I've just realized from speaking online all day. Note to self, change that about me. Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to come out of this now. I'm going to jump straight into the session. So, where are we at? Tim, would you like to say hi?
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you all for coming in. I'm Tim Gundry. I'm the subject leader for commercial photography. I think the original idea was asking me to come present something today. Is that I'm conscious of many of you are probably used to working in a very physical form in physical sketchbooks. Commercial photography is at the other end of the spectrum. We don't do anything physical, anything analog at all. We are exclusively digitally based already, and in fact this year for the first time we went with an exclusively digital submission, so all of our students complete all of their work online and submit it online either via Google Doc or via PDF. So we're at that kind of far end of that digital scale. So I think the idea today was for me to show you some of the ways that our students work, and the ways that you might want to look at working yourself.
Ideal, thank you, Tim. And Lucy, would you like to say hi?
Sure. Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Lucy Leake. I'm the Assistant Head of School for Arts and Media, and I used to be subject leader for the film programme at PCA. So like Tim, actually, a lot of what we did on film was very digital based, but I'm actually here today to talk about the more traditional analog approaches to sketchbook. So I'm taking on Sarah King. I will be channeling Sarah King completely and talking about fine art.
Wonderful, excellent news. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is shut my mouth, and yeah, if you guys have any questions throughout, just put them up in this little chat bot. I will do my best to collate them, and I think at the end I will ask them to both Tim and Lucy respectively. So yeah, fire away, guys. Be my guest. Sure.
Tim, do you want me to kick us off?
Yes, yeah, please do. Thanks for what we kind of discussed with Sarah this morning. So I think
yeah. So I think for Sarah, what was really important is that although we're working in a different way and that throws up challenges and opportunities, I think her main message was that you don't need to change your sketchbook practice. So even though you might be submitting digitally, you really don't need to adopt a new way of doing your sketchbook. So if you've got a really healthy sketchbook practice at the minute, whether that's analog or digital, nobody's asking you to change what you do. So that was like, she said that to me 3 times, just 10 minutes ago. She said, this is what I need you to say. This is really, really important. So obviously fine artists are using a massive range of different approaches to sketchbook, which do include a lot of digital practices. Any way that you do your practice is absolutely fine. And all of our teams across all of the programs are ready and able to help you to translate that into an online submission. And so we can talk about that in a minute, about different ways that that can be achieved. I don't know, Tim, are we doing this as a conversation? Sorry, I was only briefed very briefly. Or do you want me to keep going?
Yes, we can do. And I say some of our students initially struggle with making the transition to digital. They come from either a BTEC or an A-level in photography where they've got used to a physical kind of sketchbook and are used to working in that way. And we do say to all of our students, even those that want to work digitally, that they're more than welcome to carry on doing that. Some of our students still maintain a physical notebook. Some do sketch. It's just for the purpose of the submission that we ask them to make the submission digitally. So for those that hand draw, for those that hand write into a journal, recording their thoughts, all they need to do is just either scan or photograph those pages and then just drop those into a digital document to make their digital submission. And that's the way that our students work.
So one of the ways that Sarah and I were talking about that process actually happening would be to not leave that until the very end, until the submission point. But if you can start documenting your physical sketchbooks by taking a photograph and maybe dropping it into a Google slide presentation, then that way you can keep on top of it. It doesn't mean that you have to change the way that you're doing your sketchbooks, but you will need to have maybe one of these to take some photographs and drop them into a Google slide presentation. And you don't need to show your tutors everything. at the assessment point. So when you go into a tutorial with any of your tutors, you can show them the work that you're doing, you can show them your sketchbooks. When it comes to assessment, you need to select the best things, the most important, the most relevant parts of your sketchbook, and make sure those are the things that you've uploaded to a Google Doc or a Google slide to be able to share with your tutors for assessment. I can see some interesting questions coming in at the bottom of my screen, and one that I just caught was about using a Google document instead of a Google slide. Google Docs are fine. They're not that dissimilar from Google Slides, to be honest, but the Google Slide function allows you to page turn in a smoother way, in my opinion. And it also, you can customize your slides in a way that you can't customize a Google Doc. So in terms of the background color, whether it's landscape, I was about to do that wrong, landscape or portrait. So you have a little bit more control, I think, on a slideshow than you do on a Google Doc, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. Jack, what do you think about that? You're our kind of Google specialist.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was listening to what Mark was kind of saying earlier. I mean, like Google Slides is good purely for, as you said, Lucy, the kind of like a scrolling, you know, there's tiles, you can kind of see it in a cascading kind of way. It's really easy to just straight up download that as a PDF, which you can then flick through. I mean, Docs is similar in that you can download it as a PDF too. I mean, it's limited because it's that very famous kind of, you know, it's that Microsoft Word meme, isn't it, where you drop an image in and then all your text goes like 5 miles that way. And I think like that's the only issue with Docs, perhaps, maybe the
oh, I've lost you
versus there. Google. I mean, personally, I was going to just say, because obviously, like, you know, I've been through this myself, and I actually I sort of run a hashtag on Instagram called Digital Sketchbook, because I kind of did a transition to digital sketchbooks a long time ago, because everything is physical, but I needed to understand a way in that I record it. There's a couple of things that I personally do. I don't want to jump the gun or anything. Just some tips from myself. I find that I use Dropbox a lot. And if you have it on your phone, it has a scan document option. So you can like hold it above your sketchbook page and it will save it as a PDF for you. So you could like just go through the pages, just literally doing it one at a time, and it will all be stored online. And then you could use something like Acrobat just to like chuck them in, merge the PDF. I'm saying that like it's a throwaway sentence, but like there would be support available for us to show you that. I also use Dropbox in the way of, because I'm very digital in the way that I create stuff. So, you know, everything is usually on Photoshop or whatever. So I've got my Dropbox set up to, every time I hit the screenshot key, it goes straight into Dropbox in a folder. So I'm just like typing away, and then every like 10 minutes, I just consciously remind myself to like hit this button. And like, as that's happening over say 2 hours, I end up with like, you know, 50 something things, which I can kind of collate together and be like, here's my process. Like, here's my you know, my Photoshop tutorial basically. And you could do the same with recording a screen, I guess. Like, would that count for you guys if someone was to show their process?
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, that sounds really good. I wonder how that would work for somebody that's working in a sketchbook in a more traditional way, like photographing the process and dropping it somewhere. Yeah.
Totally get that.
I mean, it does sound like there's potential there for something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm slightly more chat is going to be that way inclined. But from a photographing point of view, I would agree with you. I would say something like Dropbox, or even just literally taking photos in your gallery, chucking them in Google Slides. Google Slides probably more preferred to Google Docs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. Having just worked with my son this morning, he had to make a magazine for his school homework, and he was having real trouble kind of designing it using Google Docs. And so I showed him how to use Google Slides, and then he was just gone away. You know, he could totally nail it because it gives you so much freedom of where you place things on the page. But obviously, you know, that's just one answer. You know, because we use the Google Suite at PCA, we've got unlimited storage on our Google Drives, which is really useful. And so there is that opportunity to use it. And
as well, I think like you said, there's just one option. I mean, like if you are a little bit more sort of Adobe inclined, you know, you've got wonderful things like InDesign. Like that is a gorgeous piece of software that I can't recommend enough. I appreciate that, you know, it's learning something new, but if you're after making a sort of really high-end booklet magazine, if it were, you know, it's one to learn, and a good time to learn the software, I guess. You know, we do have resources, Linda, or LinkedIn Learning, as it will be now, to kind of look at that. Just quickly, Tim, we've got a question for you. I know I was going to field them at the end, but this one seems quite relevant. From Helen, how large are the digital sketchbooks / thinking books your students make? Yeah, what kind of size, and is there a page limit?
No, it depends totally on the student. I mean, and obviously by year group as well. I mean, our first year students, I've got a couple of examples I'll show you in a moment. Actually, we've got kind of our students tend to, I mean, come back to the sort of question about slides or docs. We've tended to find that slides is great for doing presentations, but when you've got a lot of written content, as our students often have, and they're showing research, docs tends to be better. Often with slides, when they're trying to, sometimes the difference in type size is a little bit problematic. So for a first year student, some of ours, there might well be anything from 80 to 150 pages in a Google Doc. Our third year students, it's not uncommon for us to get a 300-page sketchbook, digital journal. I mean,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is quite a lot. And sometimes and file size can become a problem. Our first years invariably work with Google Docs, and we provide them with a standard template which has sections of all the things that we like to have included in there. And we encourage them to start playing around with layout and typography and page backgrounds and type sizes and colors and kinds of things. As they move into the second year, our students, most of them progress on to using Adobe InDesign, because we start to get them to start producing what we call contextualized layouts. So they're producing magazine spreads, they're producing point of sale displays for advertising, photography. So by the time they get to the third year, they're fully familiar with Adobe InDesign, and they're making things that are, you know, publication quality magazines. In fact, we actively encourage them to do that. In fact, we penalise them for just doing a Google Doc by the time they get to the third year.
But that's part of what you'd expect them to do professionally.
Yeah, so just
anyway,
what course I'm running. I mean, ours is commercial photography, so we are looking for them to have that kind of publication advertising quality to their work. So yes, they start producing professional publication quality output. So their sketchbooks themselves become a kind of a piece that you might show to a client or to an ad agency or to an art director. Yeah.
So for our fine arts, crafts, PDP, I'm forgetting other students who are not doing that kind of work, the sketchbook has a different function.
Yes.
And I think that the sketchbook itself can be part of the practice, as well as part of the thinking and the processing of ideas and kind of observations and note-taking, and it becomes really multifaceted. So it's probably less a professional document than a thinking document. You know, it might be a kind of critical thinking space.
Tell you what, can I just present to you a couple of our digital sketchbooks our students have done in Google Docs in first year, so you can kind of see the kind of thing that we've done.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that this doesn't become about digital work, because actually we're not necessarily talking about digital work, we're talking about analog work as well.
Yes.
And just how to present that digitally. So I just want to make sure that our students that are in the room, as it were, don't feel too, left out of this conversation.
Yeah, team. I just want to say that as well. Like, I think this is really good that we've got both sides. And I think I'd love to see some examples from you, Tim, and if there is any from you, Lucy, as well. Like, I think there's two different ways to do this for sure, and well, a million different ways to do it. Analog and digital, and everything in between. But yeah, I think let's dive in. Let's see one way, and then let's go the other way as well.
Okay, sure, let's do it.
Let me just show you this. So, okay, we've got. Are you seeing this workbook template?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we provide our first year students for all of their modules, and it's just a Google Doc. It gives them the key things for them to just populate. It has a contents page where we reiterate the learning outcomes. We get lots of questions about what needs to go in a workbook. So we break it down into research, the technical development, the professional documentation that's required. And then under each section, we've got the learning outcomes there. And we just clarify the specific things that we want to see within there. For example, here, for instance, we want to see contact sheets. We want to see any notes that have taken place from equipment inductions, Wednesday workshops, notes on thought, reflections on final image selections, those kind of things. So this is a very rough template for them to start populating. It's one of the handy things is it's a Google document, so it's set up with a contents page that automatically or can be updated. So as they gradually go through and populate it, before they submit it, they hit and update the table, so it becomes easy for us to access. So when we're coming to assess it, we can see, let's see the research, let's see the idea development, let's see the critical reflection, let's see the bibliography. So that's the template. To show you one which has been produced, and this is, are you seeing this Alison Robb advertising one here, the purple one? I can't actually see.
No, we're still on the template.
Okay, let me come back onto here, and then if I now present, this is one of our first years. She has played around with changing some of the background color, changing some of the type sizes, and you can kind of see here, this is a first year 20 credit module. She's got about 110 pages in there, and it's kind of chronological. So everything that's in there, her shoots, the workshops where she's had notes made from a visiting lecturer visit, contact sheets, even when she's had a tutorial with a member of staff, that's all in there as well. One of the things that's useful for us is when we come to assess this, we can just click through onto one of these pages. It's not working on here, unfortunately. So everything that's in here, her research, the links. So this is obviously exclusively digital. So she's just compiled this digital right from the outset. So that's a sort of a completed example. If I then show you another kind of approach. Again, this is one of our third years, Lauren. She felt a little bit constrained by the design possibilities in Google Slides. It is a bit restrictive. It's essentially a Word document. So, and she asked, could she work in Adobe InDesign to be able to lay it out a little bit better? So she's got still fairly simple, but a little bit more stylistic in terms of how she's been able to lay it out in terms of her choice of imagery. If I click through onto one of these specific pages here. For example, here, she's recorded a workshop. She's had a Wednesday workshop with a technician, so she's photographed that. She's sat typing notes in the session into her iPad or into her laptop during the session, so she's recorded it as she's gone along. If we go down to a sort of a later page here, there are places where she's actually printed work out for a group crit. Here she's got a contact sheet that she's brought to a group critique, and she's actually scribbled and made notes here following the critique. And then all she's done is then re-photograph that sheet with her phone. She's then just emailed that image to herself and then just dropped it into a page in InDesign. So relatively simple layout, but again, just very, very effective. So it's a mixture of kind of analog and digital work. Again, it's got a really nice kind of well-organized contents page for us to look at. In terms of page count, someone's asking, it's about 65 pages here for a first year module. That's the kind of the way that we do things. I could show you some of our second and third years, but it does get into much more designed work. They're working in Adobe InDesign.
Cool. That's really good, Tim. I think it is also worth mentioning as well, like the like page numbers doesn't necessarily equate to like success, right? So like because it's 300 pages doesn't necessarily mean like that's the standard. I guess it's like it's really dependent, right? So like you know, depends on, I mean, if you're fitting things into a template as well, things will naturally just like take up more pages. Like sketchbooks that have like just images in, perhaps, like, you know, I know students that used to hand in like really tiny like A6 ones, you know, and they were like little fiddly things, but like the content was, you know, again, very different. So is that kind of worth saying, you know, that like the page count isn't necessarily directly correlative to a photo, for example?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is fundamental. Yeah, quality is never the way, you know, it's always about what the actual quality of the work is, the ideas, the kind of evaluative quality, the criticality of it. That's what's really important. Yeah.
Cool. Tim, just a quick question that popped up for you during that. Let me just find it a moment. Is this template something that could be available for all students, or is it kind of very specific to photography?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And with that one that I showed you there was something that we specifically devised for ComPhoto, but I'm going to circulate that round to the subject leads of all the other programs to just say, look, here is a shell here with a contents page and learning outcomes and sections, and feel free to customize that and then send it out.
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks, Tim. Because I know that there are some programs that have various templates for things, just to really keep students on track of what it is that they need to do, especially when you need to evaluate your production work. Sometimes it's really difficult. Just when you're asked to write a critical evaluation, it's like, oh gosh, what exactly is that? You know, what am I actually being asked here? So to be able to template some of that activity can be really helpful. So I know there is some good practice out there, isn't there, Tim, already?
Yeah,
so we can share as much of that as possible through the subject leads.
Nice.
I've seen quite a few questions popping up from people asking about phones and can you use an iPad.
Yeah.
I think it's whatever works for you, really. We encourage students, we encourage the use of the Google Suite and Adobe InDesign, but if you've got other kind of software and layout tools that you want to use, that's absolutely fine as well. I think you've got to find your own way of working, really. Because it's a digital submission, you don't need to have a high-res camera, you don't need to have a high-res image, it's not being printed, so a typical phone camera, even if it's only 5 megapixels, is going to be perfectly fine for just recording a sketch or recording a page of writing.
Yeah, I mean, these phone cameras are actually incredible. My first digital camera was 3 megapixels, and that was state of the art. This phone's better than that. So I think that being able to upload to Google Drive is quite useful because we've all got our own Google Drives. So you can make a repository for images. You can download a Google Drive app if you've got a smartphone and get that straight on there. It's probably worth, I just was seeing some of these comments and questions coming up the side there. There were some questions about how to select work that you want to submit as part of your sketchbook. And that's going to be very individual, depending on what your project is. And I think it's really important for you to talk to your tutors in those formative sessions, tutorials and group tutorials, so that they can help you to select the best work that you can then either photograph and upload or, I guess it would be photograph and upload or create digitally. So you don't need to hand everything in, basically. And there was a question that was very specific, said, how do I select? Talk to your tutors. Yeah, that is the answer to that. In terms of the comments that are saying, I like paper, I want to work on paper, it's like, keep working on paper. And you'll probably find online, there's some quite good advice about how to translate your physical sketchbook into an online version. And it can be really simple things like laying your sketchbook open on a table that has the right colour backdrop on it that's going to suit that page, which I know sounds like really straightforward, but maybe something we hadn't always thought of. So if I want to take a photograph of my book from above and a red background is going to suit it better, stick some red behind it, take a photograph, make sure you've got some good light on it, try not to use the flash if you can. Use daylight. It's going to affect the work less that way. So, I mean, there's lots of tips that we can put together about how to photograph an analog sketchbook in a good way and get it online. I think you could probably help with that as well, actually.
Yeah,
Tim.
if I can say with that, so Lucy, I mean, I've just had a similar thing just this week of photographing my son's sketches that he's been doing. I mean, I've been taking them into Photoshop and cleaning them up, but as a good start point, having good available light and even lighting and photographing it flat and having the camera parallel to it, straight away makes it a hell of a lot easier for you. So just good lighting.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have some skills in Photoshop? If you can take it into Photoshop and correct any perspective changes, correct color temperature, get the exposure and contrast right, then that can help actually.
Or you can do that on your phone.
Yes, you can just do it on your phone if you don't necessarily have Photoshop. And a good thing as well, sometimes as well, one of the problems we find sometimes is that sometimes phone cameras are almost too high res. If you photograph a page with a 30 megapixel Huawei camera, it's going to generate a huge file. But actually, if that's a single page in your sketchbook's going to end up being 400 megabytes, which just isn't necessary.
Yeah.
So it's useful thinking about file size as well.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that helps with transferring those photographs onto a Google document or a Google slide, that they will be quite good quality once they're put onto one of those formats, and it keeps the file size smaller as well. So, yeah. What else popped up as well? Someone was asking about access to Adobe. And at the moment, we've all got free access available until the end of May, I believe. And hopefully once we get back into the college, obviously that access continues, whenever that is. I would imagine that Adobe will extend that free period whilst the lockdown continues. They haven't guaranteed that, but I would expect that would be the case because they want us to keep using that. So I don't know if Jack's heard anything more about that.
Yeah, I mean, in the initial comms that went out about Adobe, it's kind of prescribed that it will be, they've said until around May or until the pandemic is kind of over. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't extend their things for that. I mean, I obviously can't speak for Adobe, but I think it would be pretty silly for them not to do that. Yeah, so far you guys should all be able to use it and log in. If you do have any issues, you can always email the IT help desk at pca.ac.uk and they'll be able to get you online for sure. I was going to chime in, Lucy, actually, because you're talking about backdrops and stuff like that. I do something very similar. So I'm no means a photographer at all. Tim can critique me, but yeah, whenever I've got something that I really need to photograph, I've actually bought like a selection of kind of bright cards that are kind of in keeping with my brand colors. So I've got some like bright oranges and some greens. And whenever I need to photograph something, I actually just take a moment to think about it. Instead of it just being like a point and shoot, it's just a sketchbook page, I think about, right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes actually photographing something, and I'll take out this, this large piece of paper, and I'll put it on my desk where I am now, open all the windows up, get some natural light in, and then I'll try and do it like a nice overhead shot. And even just thinking about those little steps, it can change the type of like photo you get for sure. Like instead of just holding the camera up and just taking a quick snap, actually having a brief moment to like, I know nothing about lighting, but just holding it there and getting a nice backdrop and trying to alleviate shadows, it's actually quite fun to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jack.
That's okay. Yeah, let's go.
In terms of sketchbooks then, because this isn't all about assessment and submission, the important thing about the sketchbooks is that we keep working on them. So, we've got this period of time where even I've gone back to sketchbooks. I haven't had time to open a sketchbook in years. And I actually opened a sketchbook and I started drawing, and it was absolutely incredible. We've got time to really reflect on this and to make some really beautiful work in our sketchbooks, actually, and really think it through. So, I think in a way there's that time to reflect on the practice of it will be a really useful thing. And also that will help with that selection process that comes later. of like, okay, so I've meandered through my sketchbook. What do I actually want to show my tutors? You know, pull out those really key moments. The other thing I would really recommend is to, and I'm sure you do this already, but to look at other people's practice. So what are other artists doing? How are they using their sketchbooks? How are they translating them into online practices, or kind of turning them into an online thing? There are absolutely tons of resources on the internet about how that works. Probably, I mean, I've sort of been acknowledging this all day. I'm sure all of us are in the same boat, that it is really, really weird to try and do the thing that we do when we're doing it like this. You know, it's really, really challenging and it's really difficult. But there is the opportunity to try and turn it into something positive and to use it as a really critical period of reflection. Easy enough to say, you know, but if we can just take that moment to think about, okay, so what is it that I've been doing all this time? You know, I've maybe had 1, 2, 3 years in education. What's this thing that I've got? How are other people adapting to this kind of change? I don't want to get all lectury, but I just know that having, and Tim will probably agree with me here, whenever we talk to industry, employers, you know, creative industry professionals, people that might employ our graduates, and we say, what do you need? What should we teach them? And they never say teach them Adobe, teach them how to paint, teach them Photoshop. They say teach them to be flexible, teach them to be adaptable, teach them to be problem solvers. You know, that's what we've got here. We've got this situation where we have to be that. We have to be resilient and find all those creative solutions, and they're not going to be the same for everybody. So yeah, sorry, I went off on one. I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. It's actually a really valid point, Lucy. It's one of the things that we get quite a lot. We're constantly asking industry what they need, and it says, and there are those key skills about being flexible, about being adaptable, being able to deal with difficult situations, being able to problem solve. They're all those kind of personal attributes. Yeah. It goes without saying for us that they've got the technical skills. They know how to take a photograph. They know how to set up lights in the studio, along with 6,000 other people. It's a question, have they got the personal skills to actually be able to deploy those technical skills and actually be able to work in sometimes quite difficult situations, which obviously that's exactly what we're in now. So going to recall on people's personal skills and personal qualities to find ways of working. Yeah. And like I said, there is going to be no single solution that suits everyone. Some of you I know don't necessarily have laptops. Some of you trying to work on iPads. Some of you trying to work on phones. Some of you got access to software. Some of you not. Some of you got access to cameras and can photograph things. Some of you not. It's a case of trying to find a way that works best for you. Ultimately, it's your work that's most important. We can help you find ways of documenting it and presenting it in a digital sketchbook in whatever form that works for you. Ultimately, what's important is that you're working, you're studying, you're doing the work, you're doing the thinking. We can help you find ways of documenting it, presenting it for assessment. That's a relatively small challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to agree with, sorry, Lucy, if I may. I was just going to say, like, it does seem that there's very much like a divide between the academic requirements, which you guys are going to need to mark something, but then there's also the act of sketchbooking, which is a very different thing. Like, I think you have, like you said, you know, you have to really like feel it, and you kind of, you know, a sketchbook for a lot of people is like them pouring their heart and soul onto a piece of paper or a blog post or whatever it is. And that by no means should stop. Like, well, you know, that's actually more valid, I would say. But yeah, if you guys are panicking about anything, like if you're someone who's like, right, I haven't got this, I haven't got that, I haven't got this, just message your program leader, and like they will give you some advice. And if it is truly the grade you're worried about, that will get sussed out. You know, that's not going to be a problem. We are all facing some issues, and that will be tackled. The thing that I would focus on is actually falling back in love with your sketchbook.
Yeah. And I see that Joanne just asked about tips on photographing analog work in general, that would be useful. And I think maybe, Jack, we should get our heads together and put together some tips on on how to photograph analog work and actually put that out more widely, then that would be really useful.
I 100% agree.
Is it right if we go to some of the questions, Jack? Oh, I've lost your voice.
I just did the thing where I was like, I'm going to start speaking. I'm going to turn my microphone off.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got a couple of questions so far. Let's just see. I've been taking a few down here. Okay, so we've got a couple of these ones that are InDesign based. Now, it's worth mentioning there's a student called Lisa who's actually been very, she's answered a couple questions there, but we are going to be running some digital workshop Wednesdays, especially around software. So if you guys do have InDesign questions, it'd be really good to kind of hold on to those. And tomorrow, we've got a sort of round the table with all the tech dems for Workshop Wednesday. So you might be able to ask some of those questions then. So that's tomorrow in your timetable.
That's a really good idea, because there's another one that's come up from Tasmin about textiles practices. So those textured pieces, like how to get that textural quality across through a photograph. And I think maybe the tech dems who are working in textiles would be really good people to ask about that. And it may just be that you need to use really extreme close-ups, or make sure that you've got light shining from different angles to get the feel of that whole, three-dimensionality of it. But again, we can. Sorry,
Lucy. If I could just jump in there. Good photography means drawing with light. So taking good photographs is fundamentally about getting good light, and you don't need to study photography to be able to do that. Just making sure that something is as well lit as possible, placing it by a window that's got good light. As Lucy said, the light direction is what will kind of reveal the quality of it. Saying that, I noticed Christina Cutter put a comment here. Worrying to think the photographs might be assessed rather than the painting, drawing and printmaking. No,
absolutely
we're
won't.
not judging your photography skills, don't worry. We are looking at the quality of your artifact. Obviously, it's going to be helpful to us to try and get the photographs as good as you can for your sketchbook purposes. But ultimately, it's not that we're going to be assessing.
I back that 100%, Tim, because I just read Christina's just as you were reading it as well. We know that the quality of your photographs could be really varied. So please don't think that we're going to use that as part of the assessment at all. And Linda has asked, can we just post our sketchbooks via Royal Mail? Oh, I wish you could. I'd love to see it, Linda. But unfortunately, we haven't got an address that we can use for that to happen. And I think emailing them out to staff houses and stuff would be just too complicated and not safe, because we wouldn't want anything to get lost. So if only, Linda.
A couple more here. So any other time than Wednesday, just regarding the Workshop Wednesdays, they are going to be all recorded, so you'll be able to access them digitally at any point. A couple of others here. When and where can I access today's sessions? We are going to collate all of these. They've been recorded. I'm thinking they're going to either go in some form of list that you can click, or they'll be in a Google Drive. They'll be shared with all of you guys in due course, either at the end of the week or like midweek, depending on what goes down.
I've got the Wednesdays as well for anyone that's working Wednesdays. Yeah,
indeed. A couple of technical questions. So my sketchbook pages are full of handwriting. Should we type them up, what we've written alongside our pages, just in case the tutors can't read it? So are they looking for photographs of handwritten stuff, or should they rub that out?
I would never, don't change anything in your sketchbooks. Your sketchbook's your sketchbook. If you take a photograph of a page and you think that it needs some clarification, then sure, write a little bit of clarification about it. But please don't overthink it, because your sketchbook is a natural process. It's something that it's part of your practice. So don't change it. That's the key thing. Just don't change it. If you want to put extra words in, actually typed up, that's absolutely fine as well. So it's totally up to you, but talk to your tutors about that.
Cool. And one sort of paired with that one, also my sketchbook pages have photos of my artwork.
I saw that, yeah.
Would it be better to just submit the photos themselves? That's kind of photoception, or I guess a scan or something like that?
I think, again, it depends on what that practice is. So they're obviously in a sketchbook for a reason, and they may be in the context of other things that are in that sketchbook. So let's have a photograph of that sketchbook. Let's have a look at it. But again, talk to your tutors about that.
Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, we've got some here about minimum or maximum page limit for submission. I guess that's not a thing.
No.
Cool. Yeah, I know I can like vouch for that as well, because like, you know, I know like someone from illustration, for example, I've seen their sketchbooks and it's like a Bible, you know, because there's just so much in there. But then like I've seen someone from a completely different course and it just doesn't need it. Like it doesn't need that much stuff. So it's really down to the individual. Like my sketchbooks were an absolute nightmare to hand in, because, you know, I'm really sorry, Mel Brown, if you're listening, because I used to hand in like literally a pile of paper that was bulldog clipped together, and it would say stuff like, look here, then go here, look at this page, and it was a complete Horlicks to look at. But you know, that was how I had to work, and that's what I handed in ultimately at the end of the day. So yeah, you know, I'm sure you guys have like really interesting sketchbooks, and like, yeah, don't change that.
Mine never closed. They were so full of additional things, like just.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's a couple more here. PDP student Lucy, the artworks are either bigger than my book, or I want to use them as part of another picture.
I'm not sure that I understand.
PDP student, the artworks are either. Oh, okay. So like the photograph, like I guess the artwork that they're working at is massive. So the canvases are huge. Is that what you mean, Mary? Ah, okay. Mary was just chipping in.
Oh, okay, cool.
Wonderful, thank you, Mary. Okay, one from Vanessa. So we have to digitize all our journals and sketchbooks for June.
So June submission, Vanessa, June the 12th. We can't accept any physical work unless the college is open again, which it's very doubtful that it will be. In fact, let's just say it won't be, because we don't think it will be. So yeah, in that sense, the assessment that is going to happen for your remaining modules will happen through Google Classroom. So you'll submit everything through Google Classroom. So those will be digital submissions. Your tutors are currently just tweaking your module guides to make sure that you are really clear about what those digital submissions are. And so Vanessa, presumably your first or second year, I think, so you'll get your updated module guides on Thursday this week. So there'll be real clarity around that on Thursday.
Wonderful. I'll take a couple more, and then we're kind of like nicely kind of coming to the end. This one, I'm not sure if we can diffuse this, team, but yeah, I heard on the grapevine, might be rubbish, someone said.
That sounds exciting. Where's that from?
Near the top, that the PDP third year sketchbook staff will be looking at no more than 15 to 20 pages. Is this possible? Is that hoo-ha? Is that nonsense, or is that true? Do you guys know?
I don't know. They may have suggested a guideline of a selection process that is 15 to 20 pages. But I'm sure that they will talk through with you what's going to be appropriate for your project. Yeah,
I would, if you guys don't know that, and if you are a PDP and you have any questions, I would just message your program leader, and I'm sure they can diffuse that for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for the comment. It's very good. Yeah, I'm just seeing a couple here. Things about iPads. Someone said Adobe is not accessible on iPads. So Photoshop has released sort of faux Photoshop for the iPad. It's really cool. But I think it's a slightly different license to the one that we currently have for all sort of normal desktop PCs and Macs. So if you guys have tried to get into Photoshop on your iPad using this method, I don't think it's going to work. I guess if there's enough drive for it, if enough of you are using it, we can always ask Adobe if they can extend it. I think it's just a different license, because in theory, if you have bought full Photoshop, then you should be able to get it here. But yeah, I'm not sure why that's not working. But you can still use, if you guys are on, if you're an iPad user, I use an iPad as well, really cool. You can use things like AstroPad. So AstroPad will mirror to your Mac, which means you could use full scale Photoshop and then mirror that onto your iPad. There's also a Windows version called Duet Display on the Apple Store or the Play Store. Equally, if you've got like a brand new Mac, which I appreciate that some of you might not, they've got a new feature called Sidecar, and it's built into the Macs, and it will speak directly with your iPad, and you can use it as a secondary monitor. So that's kind of a nice workaround if you are wanting to really use Photoshop on your iPad. Me personally, my workaround is that I actually run Photoshop on my computer, and I create everything in Procreate, which is just a one-off payment tool, and then I send it via PSD file to Photoshop, which is a little bit like too many steps for some people, I'm sure, but that's how I get around it.
Too many steps for me, Jack.
What are you talking about? Yeah, cool. So that's kind of most of them. You guys did.
There was something I just popped up.
I was trying to question, I just see from Yvonne here saying, if we don't hand in until June, are all grades still possible, or is it straight pass or fail?
All grades are possible. Yeah, is the answer to that. So yeah, we're assessing with grades. Nice.
I've also just seen Monica has chipped in and said that's not true regarding the PDP comment. So yeah, you guys have been emailed if you're PDP. Monica has chipped.
Thanks, Mark. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Just seems a million miles away from 300 pages. Yeah, I mean, anyone, I want to address that as well. Someone just said it seems a million miles away from 300 pages, or whatever it needs to be. I really wouldn't think about numbers of pages. I would think about the type of things you are putting in there. Like, if you've got 6 amazing sketchbook pages that describe your process fully, then that's it. That's you physically can't make any more. I literally used to do this all the time when I was in like first year. I used to just I had that kind of 6th form thing in my head where I was like, I've got to write so much and I've got to put so much in here, and it was just tat. Like, it was stuff that the tutors aren't going to read, and it was actually stuff that wasn't helping my practice at all. I just felt like I needed to write more. So definitely don't feel obliged to
if I could just chip in on there, Jack, and it depends entirely by discipline as well. I mean, sometimes commercial photo students have a lot of pages because we ask them to put contact sheets in. So if they're doing a shoot, they might be taking 200-300 images, so we might have a dozen pages of thumbnails going through, which might not be the case in every discipline. And we often get students saying to us, how many pages should my sketchbook have in it? And we can't say that. It's not about the number of pages at all. Mm-hmm. It's about your demonstrating your achievement of the learning outcomes and the quality of the writing that goes with that. So really don't get hung up on page numbers.
Excellent. Guys, I'm really cautious of time. I think we have done pretty well with most of the questions. What I will say, everyone who's in this chat, there is an online forum on the student portal. So if you ever feel like you didn't get something across, or you maybe didn't want to ask a question in this format, you can go on the student portal and find that. Equally, please do just keep emailing people all these questions, because someone will answer them. I've taken everything in here and I've put it into a doc, so it's going to go further than this anyway. It will go to everyone to read.
Brilliant.
What I was going to say, team, have you got any final kind of tips, Lucy and Tim, just for students who might be a little bit nervous?
Definitely. I think the really, really important thing is to keep talking to your tutors and keep talking to each other, and they will be able to answer everything that you need to know. Everything's negotiable at the end of the day, because you're all individuals, you've got your own practice, so just keep doing what you're doing. That's it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, I think it's keep thinking about your work. Don't get too hung up on the complexities of how you're going to translate the sketchbook into a digital document. It's the working, the thinking that's important. And as Lucy said, keep talking to your program teams. I will circulate those kind of document templates that we've used, and I'll suggest that your subject leaders kind of customize those for you. So if you guys want to use those as a start point, as a template, by all means do.
Yeah, and we'll work on some top tips for analog to digital transferring and things like that, won't we?
A number of you will be looking at photographing work, whether that's photographing a flat illustration or a 3D object. And for the sounds of it, quite a few people could benefit from some top tips on how to photograph work for the best. So we're putting a guide together for you.
Yeah.
Ideal. That's amazing. Well, thank you everyone for today, because we've had collectively 500 people in any sort of which meeting, so it's really good that you're turning up, and I hope you continue to do so. Tomorrow, I believe, what have we got? So tomorrow we've got another Alone Together kind of roundtable. That's for postgrad, I believe. We've got library and academic skills. That's going to be really cool. We've got a postgrad Q&A, and we've got a technical lab live panel. That one's going to be the one where you can kind of ask questions about Workshop Wednesdays and how they're going to run, and the type of support you might need. So definitely come along to those ones in your timetable. And other than that, have a great rest of your day, whatever you're doing.
Cool. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers,
Bye
team.
for
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.